Mind-blowing prophecies of Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, part 1. Alright, let's find out all about his prophecies.
Arab Bedouins' prophecy. From millennium past, there were two types of Arabs, city dwellers and Bedouins. Bedouins are nomads. They travel through the vast deserts.
They sleep in tents, right?
Even during the golden age of Islam, when Arabs were the richest and most learned people on earth, Bedouins remained in virtually the same state that they had been for thousands of years.
I saw someone on Instagram that went for tourism somewhere. I think it was it Egypt? And there were like some Bedouins and there was like a tent and they were like sleeping outside. I'm not sure if this was in Egypt. I think it was Egypt. So are there like Bedouins too in Egypt? I don't know, but they're very fascinating because they literally sleep in the desert in freaking tents. And they do this in 2023.
Poor,
like they still exist.
and cut
It's
off from the rest of
fascinating.
the world. Yet Muhammad, peace be upon him, foretold that these Arab Bedouins of his region would one day compete with one another in the construction of tall buildings. "Now tell me of the last hour," asked the man. The Prophet replied, "That you see the barefoot, unclothed Bedouins competing in the construction of tall buildings." Today we find in the Arabian Peninsula, the Bedouins who used to be impoverished herders of camels and sheep are now not only competing with one another, but also the entire world to construct the world's
In
tallest
Abu
buildings.
Dhabi too, right? And Egypt.
How did one of the poorest
Cairo.
people on earth, who literally
Oh, that is actually really, really true. If you look at like Qatar, for example, right? You can look at Egypt. You can look like there are so many places where historically Bedouins used to live, right? And they have now crazy, crazy high buildings. And isn't there also this clock tower in Mecca? Whoa! That's mind blowing. No, that's actually really true. And not just in one country, in like multiple countries where Bedouins exist. Yo, that's crazy.
competing with
Let's
one
continue.
another, but also the entire world to
Allahu
construct
Akbar.
the world's tallest buildings.
Wow.
How did one of the poorest people on earth, who literally wore rags, become the wealthiest nations on earth?
Hard work.
One thing that made this rapid change possible
From rags
was
to
the
riches.
discovery of oil. The seemingly
oil,
empty
yeah.
deserts of the Bedouins had it in abundance. They went from camels to Cadillacs in a single generation. The
Wow.
construction of tall buildings among the Arab Bedouins has even reached Mecca, Muhammad's city of birth.
Also why Russia is so
The last
rich,
few
right?
decades have seen a massive surge in building construction in Mecca.
Didn't I mention this at Mecca Clock Tower? Here it is. This is like a super tall building. Like, that's actually, isn't this like also a Guinness World Book? I'm not sure. I think I heard about it somewhere. That this is like one of the highest clock towers in the world. And I'm not talking about towers, but the clock towers, right?
The famous Mecca Clock Tower is currently the third tallest building in the world. In order for
Yup,
such
I
construction
told
to
you.
be possible, many of Mecca's ancient
It's the
mountains
tallest
had to
with
be
the clock
demolished
or
in
the
order
second
to make
tallest, I'm not
room
sure.
for the tall buildings that had sprung up. Amazingly, this is also something that Muhammad had foretold.
Wow.
He said, "The hour will not be established until the mountains are moved from their places."
I think it was under the skin,
This
like when you
tremendous
think about
feat
it.
of demolishing entire mountains has only been made possible in the 20th century with the advent of technology such as explosives.
True.
It's important to point out that Muhammad himself was a simple man and wanted other Muslims to maintain that simplicity. He did not like Muslims to be extravagant. So, if he wanted to will this prophecy to become true, he would have to encourage the Arabs to build tall buildings. Yet, he never did.
There's something in the Quran that is actually breathtaking. This is something that really got me also thinking when I discovered Islam, right? Like there's like a verse where the uncle of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu, alahi, wasallam, he did not accept Islam, right? And there was like already a verse revealed that he will not accept Islam, and he had the chance to actually disprove the authenticity, I hope I pronounce it correct, of the Quran by just accepting it, right? And he did not accept it. he died as a non-Muslim, just like it was foretold. So if he would have actually acted against it and said, yeah, I will say La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, then the whole Quran would not be original anymore, right? Like he would disprove the whole Quran, right? But it was foretold before he died that he would not accept it. And that's how he died. So there was a chance to actually disprove the Quran. But it did not happen, just like foretold, just like here. And this was like breathtaking, so much about Islam. Like, it's a beautiful religion. So you all should read it at least once.
Disease.
The Quran is so beautiful.
Muhammad, peace be upon him, revealed that the day of judgment would not take place until sexual immorality had become so prevalent and normalized that it would begin to be carried out even in public places. He said, "The hour will not be established until people fornicate with each other in the road, just as donkeys fornicate. Today we live in a world where we are being constantly bombarded with explicit sexual imagery."
That's true, but there's another thingy. These days, at least here in Germany, there are so many couples that are like kissing and whatever they do in public, right? Like I see a lot of people, they kiss on the street when there are like crowds of people, right? So this is actually in front of like everyone, right? That they're like kissing. They don't kiss in like their home, but like literally on the street. They make out like crazy. And people pass by and they're like, oh, I better walk faster or something. Like that's each time. When I see such couple and I'm at the park here, because I live like literally next to a park. Like I see couples sometimes sit at a bench and they make out. And each time I like slightly turn my head and I see, oh, they're like people kissing. I, by instinct, walk faster. I just want to pass them by as quick as possible. It just makes me sick.
Until people fornicate with each other in the road.
Like
just
seriously.
As donkeys fornicate. Today we live in a world where we are being constantly bombarded with explicit sexual imagery, be it in TV, film, or advertising.
Advertising, yeah, like posters here in the city. They have like women bikini.
At any time, in any place. In fact, we are finding more and more stories in the news of people being arrested for having sex in public. And an interesting side note is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, described what will be the consequences of such widespread sexual immorality. He said, "Never does sexual perversion become widespread and publicly known in certain people without them being overtaken by disease that never happened to their ancestors who came before them."
Oh, there are many like this.
The increase of sexual immorality has seen the emergence of previously unheard of diseases such as AIDS, just as the Prophet Muhammad had forewarned.
True. And many others.
A world steeped in interest.
Oh.
Muhammad, peace be upon him, claimed that the practice of interest would one day become so dominant that even those who try to avoid it will still feel its impact. He said,
"True.
A time will come upon mankind when they will consume interest. Whoever does not take from it will be afflicted by its dust." This clearly describes the state of the world economy today. In the modern world, it is almost impossible to avoid dealing with, or at the very least being impacted by, interest. Just think about how many people have interest-bearing bank accounts and buy things using credit cards. Even if one somehow
And the problem is you have a hard time finding such banks that don't have any interest, right? Especially in the Western world. It's very difficult to find Islamic banking. Like there are people literally pressure to actually take an account that has interest because locally there are like no other banks available, right? And some of the banks are actually very smart and tricky. They also make it that if you deposit, like if you take out like money from the machine, right? If you're not from the same bank that you walk into where the machine is, they even have like a rate where a certain percentage of the money you want to take out, you actually have to pay as some sort of extra fee, right? Because you're not from that bank. At least this is here in Germany like that. And this is actually, it is really a big problem. Same is like with apartments, right? Like it is actually, even with like properties, there's a lot of interest coming with it as well. Yeah.
Manages to avoid dealing in interest directly, almost every aspect of our lives is impacted by it. Central banks influence the purchasing power of our money, and virtually every country in the world, even those considered to be wealthy, are drowning in interest-based debt. The financial system even suffered a global collapse in 2008, a disaster which had plunged the world into economic turmoil.
Yeah.
The consequences of which will be felt for generations to come. What
A lot
makes
of
this prediction
unemployment too.
amazing is that the financial state of the world over the last century is unique in history. At the time of Muhammad, finance was based on commodities with intrinsic value, such as gold and silver coins. Gold and silver have been used as the most common form of currency throughout history.
Yeah.
The use of paper money with no intrinsic value, along with the massive debt and interest that it has resulted in, is a phenomenon of modern finance, and not something that could have been easily guessed by Muhammad over 1400 years ago.
Wow.
The defeat of Rome and the conquest of Persia. During the Battle of the Trench, where Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his followers were under siege by their enemies, being outnumbered 3-1 and staring in the face of certain defeat, the Prophet made some bold predictions. He said, "God is most great. I have been given the keys of Syria. By God, I can see its red palaces at the moment. God is most great. I have been given Persia. God is most great. I have been given the keys of Yemen." At that moment, Muhammad had made the astonishing claim that the Muslims would not only take the lands of Yemen and Syria, much of which was under the occupation of the Roman Empire,
Oh,
but that
yeah.
they would also defeat the mighty Persian Empire. Historically, Muhammad's companions saw this prophecy fulfilled before their very eyes.
I
as
actually
they
read
went on
about
to
this.
defeat the Romans and conquer Persia. What are the odds that the Muslims
That's exactly why you have like those kind of runes there, right? And they came also to North Africa. Like you see also like Roman influence in North Africa. There are runes that have like architecture that resembles the Roman one. And according to history, this came from the Romans and stuff. Yo, that is so true, guys. Like if you research it, you actually find a lot of Roman influence across the globe, actually. Like they occupied so many different countries. And is there something like with Cleopatra in Egypt and Caesar or something, or is that just like some fantasy novel, or did it actually really happen? Because that means Rome was also in Egypt and stuff, right?
companions saw
Yo!
this prophecy fulfilled before their very eyes,
Allahu
as they
Akbar.
went on to defeat the Romans and conquer Persia. What are the odds that the Muslims, who lacked economic and military strength, could topple the superpowers of the world in such a short span of time? The astonishing way that the Muslims defeated the superpowers captured the world by surprise. As historian Barnaby Rogerson explains, you have to remember that the two great superpowers were the Byzantine Empire, i.e. the Eastern Roman Empire, and Sassanid Persia. They were the dominant superpowers. If you're putting it
For some reason, I'm thinking about 300 now, that
it's a
movie.
bit like the Eskimos taking on the United States of America and Russia.
Oh,
No rational person would have ever conceived of such a possibility.
yeah, because they're
The
minor
sentiment
force.
is echoed by historians who cannot explain how Islam became such a dominant force so quickly. Professor
Because
of
it's the
Byzantine
truth?
Studies, Andrew Louth, wrote, "The speed with which the eastern provinces of the Byzantine Empire succumbed to the Arabs remains to be explained by historians." Prevalence of writing. Many of us take for granted the ability to read and write, and
Yeah.
the abundance of books that are available in the modern age.
But now everything's
However,
digital.
For the people of the past, illiteracy was the norm, and books were very scarce. Muhammad, peace be upon him, was born into a society in which very few people could read or write. It is estimated that the number of people who were literate in his locality of Western Saudi Arabia did not exceed 17. Muhammad himself could not read or write. Against this backdrop,
I think historically it's like this: either the parents know how to do it and they teach it to their children, or the parents don't know it, but they are somehow rich, right? Because they got like some wealth from like working hard, and then they can actually send out their kids to like households where someone can like read and write to teach this, right? Yo, yeah, this came over time that like reading and everything became the norm, and schools were established and stuff. Because back in the day, there was like not really schools, right? Like I'm not sure if any schools, okay, maybe some existed back in the day, but most of the time the parents were the teachers of the children. So if they didn't know how to read or write, like they would have they would have no means to teach this to the children, right? So each generation born to this household, to this family, they would not learn to read and write until they got wealthy and sent out their kids to read and write. Then their kids would grow up to adults, have their kids, and teach it to their kids, and so on, right? And that's how over the years everyone learned how to read and write, and school system was established and all that, right? Now kids go to school and learn all that, but that was the norm back in the day. Like, the parents know something, they teach it to the kids. If the parents don't know it, they have to find the means to get wealthy with what they know, and then send out their children to learn it somewhere else and establish households with that knowledge that they can pass on to the next generation.
Against this backdrop, the Prophet Muhammad made the prediction that writing will one day become widespread among mankind. He said, "Ahead of the hour, the pen will prevail." The Arabic word used for pen here is qalam, which also carries the wider meaning of writing. This perfectly describes our world today, in which it is the norm for people to read and write. And there is an abundance of books, newspapers, and magazines.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
This has only been made possible thanks to 15th century technological advances, such as printing that took place over 800 years after Muhammad's prophecy. And with the advent of the internet, writing is spreading even more.
Yeah.
Anybody with a computer or smartphone now has access to millions of books with just the click of a finger.
Yeah.
It's quite powerful that Muhammad, who could neither read nor write, prophesied the spread of reading and writing.
Wow.
Greening of Arabia's deserts.
Oh, yeah, they bring water
Muhammad,
there and
peace
stuff.
be upon him, made a bold prediction about the future state of Arabia. He said, "The hour will not begin until the land of the Arabs once again become meadows and rivers."
That's
This
true.
narration anticipated the greening of Arabia's extensive dry desert environment. As recently as 1986, there was little to no farming in the region.
Yeah, but they have no
However,
water
for the
pipes
last 30
everywhere, right?
years, these deserts have been transformed to grow grains, fruits, and vegetables.
Yeah,
thanks to
because they
techniques
deliver
such as
water there.
central pivot irrigation. This is a process that pumps water to the surface from deep
Exactly,
underground
with
reserves,
pipes and stuff.
some of which date back to the last ice age 20,000 years ago. Now put yourself in the position of a person living in 7th century Arabia.
Like, you know what the scary part is about those prophecies? Like, if you look at, like, historically people that claim they can see the future, right? And they predict like 10 things, and from out of 10 things, 7 happen and 3 don't, right? Then you know this person was just guessing well, right? Because from 10 predicted things, only 7 happened and 3 were actually wrong. But when you look at, like, Islamic teachings, everything that was predicted by Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and like other prophets, right? All of that actually happened, and there was not a single prediction that was like a single prophecy that was like false, right? So that is like very, very, like, this goes under the skin. Like, I'm getting like goosebumps thinking about that.
20,000 years ago.
It's crazy.
Now put yourself in the position of a person living in 7th century Arabia. This region hosts some of the most extensive sand and gravel deserts in the world, with very little rainfall. Could anyone inhabiting such a harsh environment ever rationally conceive of the possibility that one day there would be a plentiful supply of water and abundant crops?
No, because you see the environment, you don't think about it.
Claim about the ancient past. Note the words of Muhammad: "The lands of the Arabs once again become meadows and rivers." By saying once again, he is implying that at one stage in their history, the deserts were lush with vegetation and life, and that they will be returning to this former state.
Wasn't the earth colder in the past or something?
Geologists now know that the Arabian Peninsula was, indeed, once filled with meadows and rivers in ancient times.
Oh yeah, because the earth was colder, I
Have
believe.
uncovered a number of fossils and conclude that once upon a time, the Arabian Peninsula was much greener and wetter, just as Muhammad had revealed. The rapid spread of Islam and the decline of the Muslims. Muhammad, peace be upon him, predicted that the Islamic civilization would reach both east and west. He said, "God folded the earth for me, and I saw its east and west, and the dominion of my nation will reach as far as the earth was folded for me." History bears witness to the fact that Islam spread rapidly.
Yeah,
both
many
east and
people
west,
are reverting.
just as Muhammad boldly had foretold. At the time, This
And
was a
immigration
geographic
too.
expansion the likes of which the world had never witnessed. The Islamic Empire was the largest the world had ever seen. The Prophet Muhammad not only informed us about the spectacular rise of the Muslims, he also foretold their decline. He said,
Decline knowledge,
"The
right?
nations will call each other and set upon you, just as diners set upon food." Someone then asked, "Will it be because of our small number that day?" The Prophet Muhammad replied, "Rather, on that day you will be many, but you will be like foam, like the foam on the river." Here we
Oh.
can see that Muhammad prophesied the dire circumstances in which the Muslims
No
would find
unity,
themselves.
right?
He explained that a day would come in which the Muslims would be large in number, but in such a state of weakness that other nations would invite one another to set upon them. The analogy of Muslims being eaten as a meal is given, which
Yo.
emphasizes just
I feel like, yeah, Muslim rights are not defended, right? Like, even in France and stuff, they make, like, laws where you can't wear the, what is it, like, abaya or something, right? In school and stuff, and France has a high Muslim population. There are certain countries that are being now completely crushed by another, and everyone is just sitting by and watching, right? There's not even coming to help, even though they could crush them in just, like, a matter of days, technically, if they all came together, right? Or, like, gone, right? Just like Pac-Man, right? There's a Pac-Man, there's like this small thingy, right? And the Pac-Man is just being eaten with one bite. Like, this could happen at a certain place where we right now have some drama going on, right? But it's not happening because the Ummah is not united. Everyone's like weak-hearted, right? Like, I look for my own problems. It doesn't matter about the problems of others, right? Kind of like that, right? And people don't learn much about the religion. I feel like everyone, like these days, so many Muslims, and this is sad, they only know the foundation, like the basics of the religion, but they don't really get deep into it, I've noticed. I know a lot of people like that, at least here in Germany, from like my surroundings, that, yeah, they go sometimes to pray Jummah, right? Sometimes maybe they fast in Ramadan, sometimes not. And they kind of like have the faith, right? But the faith is not so deep. And I feel like this is like the majority of people these days that are Muslim, right? Like maybe it's just here like that, but I see like some people, they're just partially in the deen, right?
the analogy of Muslims being eaten as
But
a
numbers
meal
are
is
high,
given,
like there are
which
many
emphasizes
Muslims in the
just
world.
how
That's so
helpless they
true.
would become. This prediction accurately describes the radical turn of events that took place in the Muslim world in the 19th and 20th century. Prior to this, the Muslim lands had grown to become some of the most powerful in the world. From the time of the death
On
of
wealth
Muhammad
too.
into the 19th century, the Muslims were economically, politically, militarily, and technologically far ahead of most of the world. Then the unthinkable happened. Nearly all the Muslim world was occupied, colonized, and militarily defeated by non-Muslim nations. Russia had annexed the Caucasus. France
Yeah.
controlled Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia.
Because
Great
nobody
Britain
came to
occupied
help.
Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Palestine, and India. And the Dutch controlled Malaysia and Indonesia. Of the 50 Muslim countries that exist today, only a few survived occupation, and the ones that did were still subject to colonial masters.
But many were given back,
All of
right?
this is just as the Prophet Muhammad had predicted. At the time, there was an estimated 200 million Muslims, representing 12.5% of the world's population.
Wow, that's a lot.
But their considerable numbers could do nothing to prevent the defeat by their rivals. They were weak like the foam on a river. Again, just as Muhammad had foretold. If we reflect on this prediction, it is quite counterintuitive. If this prediction was guesswork, then it would have made more sense to state that the Muslims would be diminished in number, and that would be the cause of their weakness. Yet Muhammad predicted the exact opposite, a paradoxical situation of the Muslims being vast in number but very weak. And it came true. Historically speaking, when religions lose their influence on the world stage in such a way, it is usually followed by a stagnation or decline in the number of their followers.
That's true.
Yet Muhammad foretold the exact opposite with regards to the religion of Islam. He said that it would continue to grow in terms of the number of followers, to the extent that it would eventually enter every household. He said, "This matter will certainly reach every place touched by night and day.
I have an
God
idea
will not leave a
on
house
that.
or residence, except that God will cause this religion to enter it." Today we are witnessing this prophecy unfold before our very eyes. Islam is currently the fastest growing religion in the world.
That's
with
true.
nearly 1 in 4 people on earth being a Muslim, and is forecasted to be the world's largest religion by the year 2070.
That could be because I see something here interesting. We have a church not far from my home, and over the years, the church has become more and more empty, like literally. Like, I remember like crowds of people entering this when I was like a small kid. I was like already an older teenager. I've noticed that like it was like half empty, right? And by now, sometimes I see just individual people enter this. So certain religions are really on decline. Plus, the parents that are Christian, for example, are not bringing their kids up as Christians anymore, right? Like, they're brought up with modern day liberal standards and stuff like that. So there isn't much of the faith there anymore. And because of a higher education now, when you tell someone about genetics and about like if this sort of flower has seeds with this sort of flower, this sort of animal mixes this and that, and then when you tell them something like, oh, so and so is the son of God, and then people are wondering, wait a second, how comes a weapon can injure him? Let's say, wouldn't the skin be like steel or harder if it gets like half the genetics from one parent or something, right? Like, wouldn't a sneeze destroy a whole city if just a word can destroy the whole planet? Like, should there be at least like 10% of the power within that child that the father has or something? Like, there are a lot of people that are like confused even about certain religious concepts. Like, this was the same with me when I looked at the Bible. Like, how can Isa alayhi salam be the son of God? Have half the genetics, but where are the freaking physical traits, right? Like, I have like neighbors where like one parent is black, one parent is white, and they're like caramel skin, right? Like they're like tanned and stuff. I know like parents that are like one parent is very tall, one is very small, the kid is in between. So how can you have a child with a person as an almighty being, and there's not at least 10 or 20% the physical traits or something? Like, excuse me, like if even the skin of two individuals, like the color is in between when they have kids, so how is it even possible? And like, there are certain aspects also where there are like contradictions in the Bible. Like, you read through it and like, wait, this verse says this and this says this. Wait, you can't sin, but someone died for my sins. Wait, what? So someone died for my sins, so I can't sin, I will go to heaven, right? But I can't commit sin, but someone already died for my sin, so I can... Like, there's certain things... When I was, like, reading this as a kid, I was already, like, questioning, like, wait, what? Wait, doesn't God, like, have all the knowledge in the world and stuff? So how comes Isa alayhi salam has to learn certain things? Wait, what? Wait, he's the son of God, but he's also God? Doesn't that mean he has, like, infinite knowledge? Where is the knowledge here? I read here by reading that there's knowledge that still needs to be acquired. Wait, what? Like, this is something, like, a lot of people think like that, and that turns them actually into atheists. Like the typical modern day Christian also here, they're not looking for a new religion because they're so busy with this dunya, right? They're looking actually for like, oh, what is a worldly pleasure? What's fun? Oh, I can study this, have a good job, become rich. Oh, there are beautiful women at this party. I go to the party or something like that. Like, these days, there are other priorities for people that grew up. But some people are still being guided and they actually find to Islam and stuff. But if you look at, like, this world these days, yeah, religion is in decline. That's so true.
This is despite Islam being constantly attacked by the media, the colonization of Muslim lands, and the many wars that have been waged in the Muslim world. Even the name Muhammad has prophetic implications. It's an Arabic word that means the praised one. The Quran states how Muhammad's remembrance will be raised. We elevated your mention for you. Since this verse was revealed over 1400
it's in the prayer,
years ago,
yeah.
the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, has been the most praised person in history.
True.
Today,
that's why you say Sallallahu, alahi, wasallam, right?
Even somewhere in the world, publicly proclaiming the time for prayer and saying,
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله.
I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God.
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.
It's beautiful.
Moreover, the name Muhammad is consistently the most popular name given to newborns across the globe.
Oh, I know
This is
many,
despite the
yeah.
fact that Muhammad never encouraged Muslims to adopt his name. In fact,
Yeah.
he said that the best names are Abdullah and Abdurrahman.
Wow.
Now, we've analyzed a number of the Prophet Muhammad's prophecies, which were made over 1400 years ago, and have seen how he has accurately foretold many things.
Yeah, nothing is
Purely from
wrong.
the
That's the
standpoint
scary
of
part,
basic
right?
Probability, for someone to accurately guess about such future events, which spanned across multiple nations in different time periods, many of which were outside the sphere of Muslim influence, to give so many predictions without making a single mistake is utterly impossible. Today, millions of people believe in false prophets and follow false systems for guidance in life.
Yeah.
As human beings,
And there are always
we want to
errors in
follow
it.
false prophets,
Some is true,
man-made
some false.
systems, and baseless superstitions, but why don't we accept the real guidance when it comes from God? God empowered the Prophet Muhammad with accurate prophecies as a way for us to distinguish the true prophets from the false. Truth has now arrived, and falsehood perished, for falsehood is, by its nature, bound to perish.
Yep. If someone's scamming you and
This video is based
and
on
you
the book, The Forbidden
Oh.
Prophecies. To learn more about the evidences for Muhammad's prophethood, please download your free copy of the book at
Okay, let's give this one a thumbs up. But yeah, if someone is scamming you, right, and they're telling you, like maybe they're reading cards for you and they're saying you will have tomorrow a wonderful day, in 1 year you will be rich, for example, right? Like let's say someone actually literally reads cards for you and you actually pay them, right? And maybe you even are subscribed to them with a monthly fee or something, like you have to pay monthly some euros. And then they like say you will be rich in 1 year. If you don't get rich in 1 year, you will see through the scam and you will be upset and the falsehood will perish, right? You will leave this right? Like you will no more subscribe to this or something, right? No, seriously, it is really like that. And the thing is about people that make like prophecies about the future, if they make 10 prophecies, like I said earlier, and only 7 are correct and 3 are false, how can you still trust that individual when there's like even one claim? Because it's oh, this could happen or it could not happen. But what if I count on that? Like I give a very dumb example, okay? Let's say you live in a village somewhere at the bottom of a mountain, and there's like someone that has been for the years foretelling stories about prophecies like this and that will happen, right? And we are now in year 2023, and this individual says in 2025 there will be a flood and the whole village will be destroyed. But you really invested in your home in this village, you spent so much money into it, right? And this person that foretold things about the future was sometimes wrong. So should you abandon your home that you invested so much money in all those years of hard work in to move to another city because it could be that there's a flood and it will destroy this village? Or will you stay and take the chance? And this is the problem, because you will never find peace in your heart if you follow this individual, because you know this individual could be wrong. But what if you follow a religion or like a prophet that is completely accurate and was never wrong? You will find peace in your heart because you know there's no error. And this is the same with religions. If you follow a religion that has one error or flaw in it, even though maybe some is correct, how can you trust anything new you learn, because there's always the maybe this, maybe that. I was disappointed before, there was some falsehood. And then there's like so much doubt, you will never find peace in your heart. And this is something to think about, guys. But yeah, guys, if you are new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. And I will see you guys next time.